goodness.
Okay. So thank you for doing this. I think this is going to be fun. You've already mentioned there's some tough questions, but feel free to answer them however. The
Okay.
microphone picks up the quality pretty well.
Okay, so I don't
And
have to
this
go
time
like
there won't
this.
be audio issues. No, you can lean back.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, let's just wait. We got to make sure we have a good angle.
yeah. So our first question, we'll just start with that, and however best you can answer it. Who is Mandy Rantucci for anyone who's watching who's not at the school? I guess associated with the second question, like obviously you can answer that you're a teacher or principal.
Okay, that's a hard question for me to answer because I didn't know what where to go with it. Is my sound? Are you checking my sound?
Just the sound, yeah.
Okay.
It should be fine.
So who is Mandy? Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I have a huge family. Come from, there's 8 of us, 8 kids, and
You include.
including me, yeah. And then there's about 30 some grandkids. So our family mostly lives here. So we do lots of family gatherings together. We're really close.
Are there great grandchildren? Because I met your
Yes.
mother, who would be,
Yeah.
when you say grandkids,
Yeah.
that's who you're referring to.
So do I pause right now? So there's my mom and dad, and then yeah, I'm the third. So there's about 6 great grandchildren. He's on the phone. This is weird. I'm doing a pause because I'm talking to the computer. This is
Yeah.
I can't keep talking when you're not here. You'll have to edit. I couldn't keep talking when you're not here. Yeah, we have to edit. No.
Okay, so
Okay.
are you done answering the question then?
No, I don't know.
Keep going.
Let's keep going. Let's
Come on,
keep
people
going.
will watch this.
No,
They'll
this
see-
is
they'll see-
embarrassing.
Oh, not at all. They'll
my
see
gosh.
you on the video. They'll be like, oh, that's my favorite teacher. I love this person. And they'll start watching. They're
This
here to listen to you, not me.
Okay, well, what do I want you to know? Let's keep going and I'll add as we go.
Okay, do you want to just go on to
Yeah,
the
let's
next
go on.
question?
Hard.
Well, yeah, that's fair enough. My friend Tony struggled with that as well. So next question. Well, how long have you been teaching?
You would answer that question.
I'm not answering the
No,
question.
but
I'm
that's what I
interviewing you.
wonder. Is how would you answer that question?
In many ways, I think you did a good job.
I told you, like, yeah.
But how long
okay.
have you been teaching?
Oh, I started teaching in 1999. So what is that? 24 years, right? What does the numbers mean that you write down?
I'm just recording when I asked the question
Okay,
for the time
gotcha.
stamps.
Okay. So like 24 years, but I took a couple leaves. I had 3 maternity leaves during that. And then at 1 year, I took an extra year because my daughter was diagnosed with diabetes. So after my mat leave, I took an extra year off to manage life with diabetes.
It's a very interesting difference, like male and female perspective teaching, especially with the way the years go and the pay raises and whatnot.
So when I started teaching, I started same year as Dan Poffin
Okay.
and Chad Starko. We all started together, and they got their 20-year about 4 years before me, which is annoying. But they
She has some pretty
went to
awesome
work and
kids.
I have pretty good kids. Yeah, yeah.
I met Chad's daughter at, or one of, I don't know if he has more, at
Yeah.
the teachers convention. One is in university. Chad Stark.
Yeah. Yeah, she would be because she's same age as Jesse. Yeah, we had kids same time.
Okay, so then what year did you become an administrator? Like when did you start doing that?
2017? 2017?
2017 was your first year as a vice principal.
Vice principal, yeah,
Okay.
at St. Ben's.
Wow. All right. Okay.
So
So next question. This was more of a fun question. As a percentage
In this
in
school?
this school, yeah, in this school. So the question is, how many student names do you know as a percentage?
Yeah, as a percent in the whole school. So my goal is that as I made this goal when I became BP in my old school, and it was much easier because I knew most of the kids. But my goal is my first year to know every child by name. So that was my goal this year. I would say out of 100%, I probably right now know, I'm going to say 82%.
So in about almost a year.
Yeah, there's a few that I'll mix up, and there's a few that I still don't know, and then there's a few that I know it, but I can't recall it. So maybe a little more than 82, maybe 85-ish. But
Okay.
I have a couple months still, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, 82% is very good.
Thanks.
How many kids do you teach?
In my classroom?
Yeah.
Not very many. Because I only teach.
Because 82% then as a number would be upwards of 200 kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
let alone everyone else you know in your community.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why I asked that
Yeah.
is twofold, right? Just with the whole
So interesting. Your
the
questions are so
relationship
interesting.
building thing.
Okay.
You know, obviously the first step in building a relationship is actually knowing the person's name. But the other thing, one thing that I've really struggled with over the years is, especially when I was really into jujitsu and still at my mosque and school, is just name overload. So in anthropological studies,
Yeah.
you know, human communities and tribes were roughly around 120 people. And so that's kind of where your maximum relationships can go. And to some extent, I would say even names, I would say.
Interesting.
The name
Okay.
part, I don't have as much information for, but the community, somewhere around 100, 120 people, is likely after when it got bigger, that's when they started branching off and had extended communities.
Okay.
And so it can be very challenging to know, you know, on a first name basis and a few details about people.
What I find
Once you get past
interesting
that.
as I start to know more kids and I'm involved with more kids through school, my family, because it's so big, I don't get as much time to know them as well. Like my extended family, not my nuclear family,
your
but
children are
yeah,
different,
I know them mostly, some of it, but I feel that gets on the back seat a little bit. What are you looking
Something's going on with the light showing in the camera. Okay, so we'll just go to the next question then. What does relationship building mean to you?
I think you said it. Relationship building is the most important thing, right?
Okay.
So,
I guess let me rephrase that question. Like, when you think of the phrase relationship building, you will do a certain set of tasks, let's say.
like how to do it?
Yeah, so everyone will do it in a very different manner, right? Some people use humor, some people just beat up other people to like get to know them. Other
Ooh.
people get to know each other's names, whatever it is. There's a variety of ways that people build and establish a relationship. What does it look like to you?
So for me, number one is knowing who they are. And that means knowing their name, knowing when I see them to say their name. Because there's something about when somebody says your name, you feel like you matter or you feel like you belong, right?
You're being summoned clearly earlier to the door.
Yeah, but when you
Yeah.
hear your name, you feel good. And I didn't know that. Like in the beginning, when I first started teaching so much, obviously you know the kids in your class, you get to know their name. But quite often, I wouldn't necessarily say their name. Even when I was teaching a class, it'd be like, "Okay, guys," or "Let's go, everyone." And now it's actually saying their name, taking the time to know them and to say their name, and then it's getting to know them, like who are they, and sincerely caring about who they are, and like asking questions. Like if I ask you, how are you doing? Or you say you're not doing very well because this is going on, well then checking in, right? Okay, what is going on? So that you know that I care. And actually I actually have to care. Like if I don't care and it's an act and it's not real,
Yeah.
then
It's
you
very
know that.
see-through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people know that, right? So today I had a kiddo come up to me and I didn't know his name actually, but
Oh, great.
I know him. I can't tell you that, but I know this kid, but I don't know their name because we've never really had a conversation, but I could tell that they were upset. And I was like, "Hey, are you okay?" You know what he said? He said, "Can I have a hug?" This is
Interesting.
like a high school kid. And so, couldn't ask him his name now, right? Because,
Well, you've already hugged him.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
we talked quite a bit. And then I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do I not know this kid's name?" I know this kid, but I didn't know their name. So I went and I figured out their name after because next time I see them, I want to say like, "Hey,"
So
and
and
their
so.
name. Yeah, how's it going, right? But that was huge. But for kids to feel safe to say, "Can I have a hug?" Like a high school kid, that's huge, you know?
And this is someone you clearly chatted with before then.
Like just like kind of hi, right? But talk to their friends, know their friends more.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's those really quiet people that you don't, the other ones kind of come to you. So you talk to them. And there's the one that stays back and you don't know that they are really even listening or invested. but they are. So it was a reminder to me today, like those quiet people, check in with them, you know? Yeah, that was a huge
Well,
moment.
one thing I try to tell kids, it's not that I don't know your name. It's like,
You
I
won't.
know who you are. I know your name, but my brain won't connect those two pathways for whatever reason. Because, I had a situation last year. I had a student, this girl, I looked at her, I was staring at her for like a good 10 seconds, and I'm like, your name's not coming back to me, I'll come back to you. She's very bothered by this.
It hurts them.
10, 15 minutes later, I come back, same thing. Like, just not coming back. Right? And then the student had to remind me their name. And then as soon as they said it, it's like, oh, of course that's your name. And the worst part was that there was two students with the same name in the class. So technically I forgot two people's names that day.
You knew that they had the same name?
Yeah, I
know.
knew the two of them had the same name, right? But yeah, sometimes you just can't remember a person's name.
And our brains do that because I think you're right. As we know so many names, it's like there's a few that I just,
Yeah, I'll ask you a side question then. So you talked about getting to know the person. What are some of your go-tos for that? Like, what do you ask a person to get to know them better?
always.
Generally speaking, what are your go-tos?
When's your birthday?
Okay.
I need to know when your birthday is because I got to know your sign because your sign, believe it or not, it actually,
Interesting.
yeah. And even if it doesn't, so if you're like, oh, my birthday's April 6th, I'm an Aries. I'm like, okay, this means you're this, this, and this. As you tell me that you're not, you're telling me who you are. And also, I'm seeing who you are in the way that, because if I get you talking about yourself, I'm going to get to know you in the way you talk about yourself, right?
It's like reverse psychology then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, okay, either you are this or you're not. And if you're
Yeah.
not, you're going to tell me who you are. Now
Yeah.
I know you.
Yeah. And you might tell me that you're not, but I'm going to see that you actually are as you're telling me that you're not, because maybe you're not self aware,
Yeah.
but I can see that you are stubborn, even though, like, right? You're not. Or you say you're not.
Okay. I guess we already covered the next question.
Just wait. Birthday, favorite color.
Oh,
Favorite color. That's important, right? Are you a gray person? Are you a red person? That I need to know that. That's a big thing.
yeah.
And then yeah, sports, pets. I just kind of want to know what your interests are, you know. But if I say to you, "What are you interested in?" Just like you say to me, "Who's Mandy?" I'm like, but if you say,
What
"Do you
sports do
play
you
basketball?" or right, then that's easier to talk about. So I'll ask, yeah, do you play sports? No, I don't play sports. Oh, are you an artist? No, I'm not an artist. Oh, you listen to music? And then you just kind of,
Okay, so you pepper them with just general questions about things that people are going to like anyways.
so I
until
used
you
to want to
find
be a
something.
reporter. Like growing up, I
Really?
thought I was going to be a reporter. So lots of times when I meet people, I do pepper them. And then they're like, who? Like, is this, I have one boy in the school. He thinks I'm interrogating him all the time, but I'm just trying to get to know him. But I also have to like learn to read people and like slow down and calm down sometimes and not like you're just chill. So if you're going to be like, why are you asking me this? Right?
Well, I know how to dodge questions too. Right?
Yeah, no, I noticed that.
Okay, so we'll move on to question 6 here then. What are some of the challenges you've found, like in building relationships? And I guess maybe now, kind of 20 years into it, you're clearly walking into the school. You're very good at it. Part of it might have been you knew many of these kids when they were little, right? But regardless, when you revisit someone several years later, and now they've gone through
Yeah.
kind of junior high, a bit of high school, they're going to be different. But generally, kind of early on in your career as well, what were some of the challenges that you faced,
With building relationship,
or roadblocks as well?
time, right? Because we're here and it's all about relationship, but we actually have work that we have to do that is, there's curriculum or there's policies or there's different things that we have to do. So time. And then when you need to have those moments, just those harder moments, right? Where those conflict moments or those moments where you need to hold people accountable or those intervention moments, they can cause setbacks. Like if they have to happen early on, like if I'm trying to build a relationship with you as a teacher and get to know you and support you and give you what you need, and then I have to give you a reprimand for something right away. That's really hard if we don't have that yet. So it can push it back, right? Same thing with kids. If I'm trying to like build a relationship with this kid, but there's all these things that I have to intervene about, then it just takes longer because you got to build the trust. And if I have to keep coming down on you, it can make it more. It can also, it depends on the kid, right? And it depends on the adult who you're doing it with, but time, having to have those hard conversations can be difficult depending who you are. And like my heart. Because like you care about them, you care whoever it is, as you get to know them and care about them, it's you carry a lot, right? Like what they're going through and you can't fix things. So just you can be there, but you can't fix things. And watching people not being able to make the right choices, not being able to get through things and knowing you can't do it for them, helping to support them, but they still make the choice that you're like, ah,
Watching someone make a bad choice,
yeah.
especially if it's someone you care a lot about, or because you probably taught quite a bit of your own family being in Ladue for a while. You see,
That's a whole other story because when you teach your family, and my kids and my I had my grandson at my school till last year, right? Like they know that at school.
sorry, did you say grandson?
Yeah.
Okay.
They know at school. I mean, obviously I see them, they're my family, I love them, but I don't see them differently. It's not like I've had parents say like, "Oh, I know this is your niece." So I don't even think of them that way. They're another student because I care about them all. But it can make it difficult for them. It can be difficult because people might treat them differently. And they also might, like when I taught my son kindergarten years ago, and we were doing circle time, and you raise your hand and take your turn to share. And he raised his hand and he said, "It just seems like you love everybody but me." And that was like, because I really do see them all the same. It wasn't like, "Oh, he's my son, he gets to sit on my knee." Like, no, right?
Yeah.
You're a
Like,
child in
no student
kindergarten.
gets to sit
We're
on
not
your
sitting
knee.
on my knee, right? The only one that was the child that had special needs or whatever, right? So, yeah, so that can be hard. I don't know. That's a tangent, but
But it's very related, right? You know, that's something that didn't really hit me until I actually got a contract. Well, even before actually. So even in my IFX, AFX, my student teaching practicums, well, let's just say this specific example. I had this 10-2 class at Wagner, and WP Wagner has a very high South Asian population. And I never told these kids I was from Pakistan. I just told them, I know when you're swearing, like I can detect it instantly because I speak the language. They didn't know how I could do it.
you didn't tell them you spoke the language?
No, I regret not telling them that I was from Pakistan because I never did. Because in university they teach you to keep a separation. They don't really tell you what that balance is, which we'll discuss later. But
Yeah.
part of it is like you find out things about students. So this one particular student who would kind of act out a lot, and he's doing things to get my attention, and I'm trying to build a relationship with all of these kids, and I kept wondering, well, why is this kid acting this way? And then eventually, just clicking random things on the Power School, I saw his report, his background, and it turned out that his father had died a few years ago, and it's like, oh, interesting, and you just see this person very differently, and you care for them very differently. And that's one of the challenges I've found with relationship building. It's like, okay, now that I've gotten to know you and you leave, like now there's like an empty space there. And no class is ever the same, although they feel there's a lot of similarities. Like no two groups of kids are ever the same. And it's very hard to find and to have a similar relationship or experience with a different person, right? Like everyone has their own unique thumbprint, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's definitely not something that people are prepared for. Like I wasn't prepared for that. So even last year when that group graduated, despite the fact that I didn't teach many of them, even in the hallway conversations, you get to know them, you're invested in what they're doing, who they might be, and then they leave and it's like, oh, like I'm never going to see these people again.
You lose, right? You will. You see some, they come, but not in the same way, right? But they'll come and see you and it's a really cool feeling. Like you'll see them 10, 15 years down the road and they'll tell you what they really thought. No, it's neat to be a part. It's neat to be a part. First time I was teaching grade 9 here in like early 2000s. And then I left to go to St. Ben's to teach there. And so it was probably, I don't know, 8, 9 years later, I'm at Southgate Mall. And there's this young man with his wife and their 2 babies. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Are you Mrs. Hoger?" My name used to be Mrs. Hoger. And I'm like, "Jonathan." And as soon as I didn't recognize him till he said that. And then I saw him as that grade 9 boy. And he's like, "Yeah, I want you to meet my wife and my kids." And it's such a feeling of like, okay, I didn't know if you were gonna pass grade 9, like really, and now you're a man, and
Yeah,
you know, like you have a family,
yeah.
and you got your act together, and she seems to really love you. So like, you know, so it's really cool to see, and you'll have that.
Interesting. So next question then, how has building relationships impacted your career? Kind of, I guess, for the both positive and negative.
I don't think that you can do this well if you don't focus on relationships.
And by this you mean teaching.
Teaching, being, yeah.
And really any leadership position, anytime you're kind of supervising over a group of people, if you don't actually know them, it's going to be
Yeah,
very difficult.
yeah, yeah. And the big there, I wouldn't say there's a hindrance at all. Like I think that you need to build relationship with anything you do, right? Um, but it becomes you, right? Like you don't go home and you're done for the day. Like, and you know, I told my kids this the other day. I'm like, not to be creepy, but I think about you, right? Like you don't go home. You don't, you know, in the summer you might get a little reprise, but not really. But yeah, it consumes you. It's a part of you. So that is how it's impacted me. Is it's brought so many people, like so much to my life. You know, I can't imagine going to work and then going home and then just going to work the next day. Like I can't even imagine because I've always done this, right? So I can't imagine, you know, like go working on a ski hill for the summer or that's weird
Okay,
for
so
the winter.
you're trying to highlight,
For the winter.
because with teaching, there's a repetitive cycle. We see the same people every day. And many jobs, it's a bit of a transient nature of like you
Yeah,
see a bunch of people every day.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how much that connects to temperament, right? So one wonder
yeah,
where that would be found. Probably on the compassion bit. Or like if you're hiring compassion, you're more likely then to be concerned for other people's problems.
yeah.
Think of them.
See, years ago when Jesse was diagnosed with diabetes and I took a year off, I worked at a bar in Wetaskiwin. I was bartending there. A friend of mine owned a bar, so and I did that a couple nights a week, which was super fun. And I loved it because like the fast pace and all that fun stuff, the music, but I loved getting to know the people. So I knew that these people came in on Wednesday night and they had this, and I knew that she was coming from work and he was coming from ball, and like you get to know the people. And I thought I could actually thought I could bartend forever. Like, so much fun, right? Less stress than
No mark.
this. Yeah. But same thing. It was the people and the relationships, and I got to know them so that, oh, hey, you have this and you want this. And so it really is a compassion, I think, just wanting to know
But
people.
extroversion's tied into that too, just wanting to be around people as well.
Would you believe that I'm kind of an introvert? I'm off
We
topic.
discussed
Yeah,
that
we did.
though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say I have a very similar tendency. Like there are many times in my day in life, generally speaking, where I don't want anything to do with anyone. I mean, for example, like I went to a concert last night. I talked to one person.
You went to a concert last night?
I did.
What concert?
An Alan Raymond concert.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was at Union Hall. But you know, despite the
You didn't
fact
talk
that
to one person?
I talked to one person, and they kind of chatted with me.
Did you
Yeah,
go by yourself?
I did go by
I
myself.
love that you did that.
Yeah, I stood there.
That's cool.
I
That
stood,
takes courage.
stood there like this the whole time.
Did you?
Oh, more or less.
Well, why did you go?
So I started listening to this guy's music like a month ago, and it's pretty good. And some of the YouTube comments on his videos were like, "Oh, you have to see this guy perform live." Lo and behold, in a few weeks he's coming to town.
Is he good?
Like he was quite good. I would like to see him a second time to get a proper opinion, but that's off topic. It's not related to this,
Sorry.
but
I do that.
I mean, there is still that need for individuality because I would think of an introvert as someone who, like, let's say you didn't want to leave your office or didn't want to go too far out of your
Yeah,
classroom,
you're
right?
right. I like
So
to
the
get out and talk
tendency
to
is
people.
more so to be around people, but then that need to decompress and to be alone as well is very necessary because otherwise
Yeah.
you just start going a little like stir crazy.
Yeah.
You're just constantly around people.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, we'll
That
ask the next question. What is the benefit to having good, healthy, well-established relationships with our students? And I guess that would be kind of towards anyone who's a teacher or anyone in a leadership position.
well, the benefit is like for yourself, obviously, but if you want to teach them anything, or if you want to help them grow in any way, or if you want to have any influence over them, they need to know that you care about them. And they need to know, they need to respect you. And I used to, like when I grew up, my sister would always say, I don't have to respect them if they don't respect me. And I always thought,
Your sister
oh,
who's a teacher,
my
what meant?
no, not the one that's a teacher,
Okay.
my younger sister.
Okay.
The one that has a daughter here. But
Okay.
but she there's a little hint for you. And I was like, no, that's not right. You need to I was always taught growing up, you respect your elders. So like no matter what, I respect you because you're my elder. But now I actually agree with my younger sister. Respect is two ways. And if I want a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, an 8-year-old, anyone, you, to respect me, I have to show you respect first. Because why would you respect me? Why would you care? Why would a 14-year-old care what I said just because I'm right?
Do
They
you
need to know I respect them.
do you think that that's changed in the last 10, 20 years?
Yes. I
Okay.
think growing up,
Because that is more of a traditional value of like, well, you respect your
you
elders
respect your elders.
regardless.
And I still think you should respect your elders,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
obviously, right? Like if my mom watches this, I do think
Well,
that.
and then I guess we should specify, like in my mind, that's to me, I show respect to everyone just out of a general courtesy. Like I'm just being courteous, and I really enjoy doing that with strangers. So, I wasn't an a-hole at the concert, right? I kind of just
Yeah.
stood there, did my thing, didn't bother anyone.
So what if what if I was a stranger and I did something to,
Well, I have no trouble being disagreeable, right? So, like if you're bumping into me, I'll just put my hand on you. And obviously, like you're a smaller woman, so how I deal with you is very different than if some guy was just
yeah,
bumping into me, right? But if
yeah.
a guy was just bumping into me, it's like, hey,
You set your boundary.
yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah. But do you also in your head know, okay, maybe he just bumped into me, even if it was like he's in a hurry or
Yeah, no, no. So it's like if somebody just bumps into you once, it's like, okay, like if several people do that, it's annoying. So maybe the eighth person's gonna like have a problem to deal with. But yeah, if somebody bumps like 2 or 3 times, it's like, hey, like, you set the boundary.
yeah,
Let people know that, hey, you can't do that.
yeah,
But generally speaking, on that topic of respect, just the general courtesy of you're a human being with dignity, and I'm not going to mistreat you for no reason. Like I'm not going to start a conflict for no reason. I'm not an idiot. Just disagreeable, right?
yeah,
And I think that value can sometimes be sorely missed, like the generation now. So I'm curious to hear about the shift. There's a lot of entitlement and self-righteousness. And so it's like, no, you should respect me first. Like, well, you're not someone worth respecting. Let's be honest. Like you don't carry yourself with dignity
yeah.
or respect to begin with. And your behavior and attitude. Yeah. So I don't really talk professionally.
That's fine. You do
I
you.
understand that you're a principal, but I'll just be upfront on that note. But you look at the way certain people carry themselves, just broadly speaking, and it's not necessarily in a very dignified manner or in a manner that suggests that they respect other people's dignity. And then you look at them and wonder, like, why would anyone respect you? Like you're I can't think of the specific word for it that is appropriate for the channel.
Yeah.
But so you have noticed this shift over time.
That people, I think so. I think I have, but then maybe I'm just more aware. But when I grew up, which was a few years ago. Yeah, you respected your elders and kids like, yeah, but like if you're talking about, are you talking about in the whole world or in school?
Just in general, let's say like let's just stick to Alberta, North
They're
America.
still, no, like people say, oh, back in my day, kids knew, but did they? Or like back in my day, things were different, but were they? Or does everything just look different because as we get older, we remember it's just like with technology, like, oh, we cell phones are so bad now. Everyone's like, oh, kids shouldn't have cell phones. They all have their cell phones. They have this, they have that. Well, back then, what did they have? Like, it's almost like a new problem. And do I think that I think that we were different. I think that it was more instilled, but I think times were different. And I think because there's more like people are owning their their shit more. Like people are more like, this is me, and I need to be treated. Like you look at women or men who are sexually assaulted in like what's going on with the Leduc, city of Leduc right now. Like there's lots of things going on. Oh, yeah. And it's like back then, if somebody was making me feel uncomfortable, like if I was sitting here with you right now and you put your hand on my leg, would I back years ago be like, set a boundary? Or would I just be like, well, I better be respectful? Okay. So I think I would have just been like,
Well, is that respect or fear?
well, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But I think people now are more vocal about setting boundaries. And I think maybe they are not refined in how to set boundaries, and it comes across as disrespect sometimes. I think that if I go up to a kid coming back to school and they're skipping class and they look like they maybe been doing something they shouldn't be doing, and if I go up hot to trot and like, they're going to go on guard, right? And they are probably going to speak to me in a way that is probably not respectful because they're scared, right? So, and then I could say, "Oh, you're being disrespectful," right? And then all of a sudden they're in trouble for being disrespectful, when really the way I approached them wasn't really maybe respectful to how maybe they were coming into that situation. And I am older and I am wiser, so I need to show dignity and respect to that vulnerable person, even though they're not probably in a place to show it to me, right? So like, even though they aren't treating me the way that they should be treating me, if I'm treating them in an aggressive way or coming at them or not being respectful to them, I have no hope of teaching them, no hope of them being like, oh crap.
Well, let's say that saying, oh, kid is yours, and in the hallway you had to deal with them and it didn't go so well. It's like, and I'll be honest with myself, when that happens, when there's like a clear dysfunction, it's like, well, now I don't want to talk to you or look at you. That's just who I am as a person.
To a student?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say anything. Like, I won't express
you
that.
Need a timeout.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. Maybe this relates to my disgust sensitivity, but when someone crosses that line, what? Disgust sensitivity, right? Orderliness. Okay. Which my orderliness is rather high, right? I have like some kids slurp their nose in class, and I almost vomited. Like, but it was bad. It was running, and I kid you not, Mandy, I almost puked in front of my grade 12s today. They don't even know.
Did you say something?
No. Okay. Well, like, I don't know. I don't know exactly who it was, but it's like, hey, sometimes I will tell kids, like, there's a tissue paper right there. Yeah. I had a grade 9 student the other day blowing his nose in class, and it disgusts me. Yeah. And after the second time he went up to do it, I was like, hey, just step outside.
I hate nose blowing too. I'd rather you sit there and just do this quietly.
So that scale on orderliness also relates to, let's say, morality and moral transgression. So if someone does something to me that really irritates me, or they behave in a way that's irritating.
Yeah.
My response, and you can say that it's childish, but it's just who I am. It's like, I don't want to look at you. Now, my profession, you can't just do that. So it's like, how do you reconcile? Like, I have to figure out a way to reconcile that eventually. And it's possible, but part of it is also like, how willing is the other person to engage in, let's say, mutually respectful dialogue, right? And if that other person's not, it's like, listen, if I don't see you until the day you die, it's still too soon.
You don't mean that.
On the extreme ends, like if somebody really bothers me, it's like, yeah, I have no problem not dealing with you ever again.
Well,
And so, it's tricky. So I would still like to address two of those points you made. And yeah, as the older, more mature person, I'm very fortunate in my own life to have role models and mentors. And so Jocko Willink being one of them, he's a former Navy SEAL, retired. One of the things he says is that calm is contagious. And so him dealing with guys who are in combat, who are, life and death, hairline situations, just recognizing that in those situations, when you're calm as the leader, the people around you will get calm. And just noticing that, like if a student comes in really, really like heated and emotional, mostly what I've noticed if I reflect what I do is just sit there and say nothing and just, okay, I'm listening, I hear you, and ask them questions. And slowly it comes back down.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now we're not in our emotions, we're in our logical, more or less in our logical mind.
Yeah.
Then we can have a discussion. I can push back and say, hey, so what were you doing at this time? What was happening? Why did this happen? And get more details. But that is a situation that, again, these things aren't taught in university. Like, hey,
No.
be as calm as you possibly can be. Now, that doesn't mean, and some of the grade 12s were chatting in the gym. One of them mentioned that he had seen me mad. And it's like, when was that? Like, I don't recall ever getting angry. But obviously, you're allowed to get frustrated and be upset. But how we deal with people in those situations when, that relationship could be on the line, the question of, am I being respected? Am I giving enough respect? Is blurry, being calm in those situations.
You're mostly just a calm person, though. Actually, that's
Yeah, so
something that I
my
admire about you.
volatility is very low,
Yeah.
if not zero.
What was mine? I can't remember.
Moderately low. I don't
Yeah, I
recall
don't
it
think
being
it's
high. Which is interesting because I wasn't that way as a child. Like when I was younger, it was very much like instant. I forgot the second point I wanted to make, but yeah. So you had mentioned that, being older and wiser, and it's very difficult to turn the other cheek. You're like, oh, this person's saying and doing things that I don't like, maybe repeatedly. And let's say from a teacher to administrative point of view, think, okay, well, knowing that little to nothing will be done, it's very hard to do that, and it takes a lot of. And I can't even pinpoint exactly what it is. Like, is it courage to turn the other cheek in those situations? Is it mercy? Is it cowardice? Like, what are you supposed to do in these situations? 'Cause it's a very blurry line. It's very hard to know. And when it keeps happening.
With kiddos or with anyone?
Well, just particularly with kids, because the way we have to deal with them is very different than, because. And the other thing is two adults, generally speaking, are just going to be courteous. Like, why would you want to have a conflict with a stranger? And being wise enough to recognize that if a stranger wants to have a conflict with you, they're looking for a fight, and it's probably better to not engage.
What I find is I have to know what I've invested into this relationship already. And if I don't have a lot invested, I have a very thin line, because I mean, if it's a discipline thing and there needs to be discipline, then it just is what it is, right? But if it's just like little things that, that that happen, I have to really decide what the battle is. What's the point? What's the point? So did they tell me to F off? Okay. Well, I could totally come at it hard, because you're not really supposed to do that, right? But if I have nothing in this relationship, and that's my first thing, I have to now, after that's dealt with, however that gets dealt with, I have to now build that relationship. And I've already put like a hole in that bucket, and now I have to patch that up. And right? It's like I have to build that up, because
So it is
there's a
mercy
negative
that you do
connotation.
in that situation.
Depending if there's non-negotiables, right? If we're sitting in a classroom and I walk by you and I can tell you're just in a crappy mood and I say something to you and you tell me off quietly, nobody else hears. Let's figure this out. But
What
if
a
you
rare
right?
occurrence.
But
It's
if
usually loud and
if I
dramatic.
have to, if it's something that needs to be dealt with, then I have to deal with it. However, if it's, oh, I'm giving people ideas, but I have to have a relationship with you, right? And if I don't, it's going to be really hard to have you buy in. And I have to spend a lot of time with you. Like I have to spend years with you, getting to know your parents. So I want to have good things, right? I want to call your parents and let them know the good things. I don't want my first call to your parents to be like a negative thing because I want you to go home and your mom to be like, "Oh, vice principal called today." And guess what? And you're like,
happy.
"What?" Yeah, I want you to have that so that when you see me, we have that. And I don't need you to like me, but I want you to know that I care about you. I could care less how you feel about me because it's going to change every day, right? Especially if you're a teenager, it changes every minute how you feel.
Oh,
So that's not what matters, but that you know that I care about you, that matters.
Well, and that's interesting then, the line of like, well, if today you're feeling very high about me, you're very friendly, hi, hello,
Yeah.
fist bump in the hallway, great, but tomorrow you're feeling very low and in the class you're being rude or insulting and disrespectful. It's like, how do you deal with that?
So
At
again,
this point, I'm asking for advice.
wait, when they are really feeling
Hmm.
excited and high and happy to see you, they genuinely are happy to see you, and they generally are. They're feeling good. And when they are pissy at you, it's got nothing to do with you. Like it's got nothing to do with you. Something's going on. Something's going on. They had a bad day. They had a fight with somebody. They're feeling like they have no friends. You first, in that whatever way, made them feel. Maybe they didn't do their homework, and you called them out. Right? Something's going on, so they're having a bad time, and they need to be held accountable. But it doesn't mean that they. It's really got nothing to do with
punished.
you. Yeah, and maybe they do need to be punished. Maybe you know what you need to say. You know what? That's not appropriate. Here's what we're gonna do. Now, you as a teacher, you can also say, now, I could send them to the office. I could call the principal. I could, all these things I could do. Or I could say, hey, you know what? We had a bad day today. I know yesterday was a good day, and I know that this is not normally you. Um, we gotta we gotta do better tomorrow, right? And then tomorrow when you see them, you like give them a little, hey, how's it going? And you thought about them and maybe you know that they like hockey and you ask them how the game was or something, right? Like you build in a safe, non-threatening way, you build that relationship. Not in your classroom in front of kids in a way that maybe they're scared of social, maybe they hate social, maybe social's boring, maybe they don't remember dates and times and they have no idea what you're talking about the whole time you're
Me
talking.
neither, kids.
Why do you need to know dates? Anyways, who cares? It happened. This is a general amount of time. I don't need to know it was 1914 this day. I just need to know about, right? Like, why do I need to know the circumference of a circle? Actually, I found that out today in math. But anyways,
Probably
in
not
case you're
use
going to
that.
paint. Yeah, you are, actually. Mr. Malaka told me, in case you're going to paint, you need to know how much paint to get.
I don't know if everyone's ever done the measurements beforehand.
He did. He did. Because I asked him that.
The one
But-
person who did.
I know.
Uh-huh.
I know.
Interesting.
It really is all about relationship and actually caring about people. And lots of people, as I get further along, tell me that about teacher burnout, teachers leaving the profession, and that makes me sad. I don't want teachers to leave the profession, but I also don't want teachers to stay because it's a job. I want teachers to stay because they love it, and I want teachers to stay because they love what they're doing and the impact that they're having on kids. I don't remember a thing that I learned in grade 4. But I do remember Mrs. Hartman. She was my teacher. And I remember that she had a birthday and we got her a Cabbage Patch Kid. And I remember that she made me sit, me and Jenny Allis and Paula Marcato had to sit with this girl that was terrible behavior. She put her in our group of 4 and we had to sit with her because she told us we were role models for this girl. And I remember that. And I remember gym class, and I remember that she let me lead in floor hockey because I liked floor hockey. Like that, I remember. I have no idea what I learned. I have no idea if I learned how to multiply. I must have, but I don't remember that.
I remember my grade 4 teacher as well, Miss Mulick was her
Oh,
name, and her gimmick was she just loved cows.
see? And
I
did
remember.
she even like cows, or did she because of her
I
name?
don't
She just
even know.
made
We
it.
were
Yeah,
too young to really know.
yeah.
It's entirely possible. Kids were just like, "Oh, Miss Mulick, here's a cow," and it just built right because like that can happen. I remember her calling my friend Adam a fat cow.
Fat cow.
He probably
Was he?
deserved it that day. He is a big guy.
Okay.
Still is a big guy. No,
It's worse.
he's like 6 foot something. Like he was also tall, right? He's a big dude.
Yeah.
He was never fat. Like he was just a big guy. But that was funny. Okay, we'll
But
move.
she must have had a relationship with him to call him that. Or maybe
I
not.
really couldn't tell
Maybe
you.
she
That
got
was
fired.
grade 4. No, she definitely didn't get fired. No, but he
Did
was
she
really
put
bothered.
Moo? Isn't Moo like a ice cream thing or something?
I don't know.
I think it's an ice cream place.
I don't know.
I think it is. We should research that later. Okay.
Roll into the next question. So, who were or are some of your mentors in this area? Kind of focusing on the question of like why even build relationships? Because it's not necessarily intuitive to everyone who does this profession or who partakes in a leadership position that you know to actually go out and get to know the people you're working with. And then I guess the difference in our career where we're at, especially as a young person, like many students have commented to me, like, "Oh, you feel like another student." It's like, I don't know how I feel about that statement,
That
right?
you feel like to them?
Yeah, like I don't know how I feel about that statement. It's like, well, what do you do at that point, right? But for me, regardless, so one of my mentors is John Maxwell, and in his book Five Levels of Leadership, he kind of emphasizes to go from the first to the second. You need to have a relationship with the people you're working with. So I'm curious, like, who are some of your mentors and role models in that area?
Well, it starts with my family. My mom, in the way that she was never in education teaching in any way, but the way I've seen her build a relationship with people. The way that we were in Kelowna one summer, and there was a homeless man on the street, and he was walking around picking up the cigarette butts off the street. And so she went into the gas station and she bought him a pack of smokes. And it makes me cry, but she bought him a pack of smokes. And I tell my students that story because what are most people thinking? They're thinking like, buy him some food, right? He's homeless. He clearly doesn't have money. But he's not picking up, he's not looking for food. He's looking for smokes. And it's like, well, smoking's bad for you. He shouldn't be doing that. She bought him smokes. And it was like, hey, why'd you buy him smokes? Because everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And he really wanted to smoke. And so here's a pack. And he was so happy. Like, and so that's where I always come from, like with, I can't judge you and I can't make you do things that I think you should do. And who's to say that I'm right, right? But I can treat you with dignity. And you really want a pack of smokes? You should be able to buy a pack of smokes if you really want a pack of smokes, you know? Don't smoke, but so that's something that has always stuck with me though. My dad also, he's a very successful man and he's run his own company for 45 years. And his thing that I will always remember is if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So if I don't have anything nice to say to you, and I might feel that way sometimes, right? You have people in your classes or people that you work with that then just shut up and don't say anything because you should have something nice to say before you want to say something else, right? If I'm going to come at you because I'm mad at this and you're doing this wrong and all these things I need to come at you about, well, if I don't have anything nice to say to you, that's a problem. And then professionally, to go into admin, I'm leaving right from teaching to admin, but Sean McGinnis, oh, it's so creepy. Crack your neck. He was the assistant superintendent here. And he was a
He hired
relationship guy.
Margaret. Is that?
Did he hire Margaret?
I've heard this name before.
Oh, I don't think he would have hired Margaret because he was after Margaret started. She's old like me. Well, her and I used to share a classroom.
You shared a classroom.
No, actually, she came and I left. We shared a classroom for like 6 months. And then I got a new job. Not because of Margaret. I got pregnant. But he was 100% a relationship person. And not a relationship person in the way that he didn't do any work and just talked to people, but a relationship person in the way that would phone you and have those phone calls. Instead of sending you an email, he'd phone you and say, hey, I noticed this. What do you think about this? Like, talked to you, right? And right in this world right now, it's so many like, oh yeah, put on my desk, or yeah, just knock on the door and stick it on there. I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm busy.
Well, for the kids, they're just texting and like they use Snapchat, which is just a horrible way to communicate with people. Your messages disappear. You can't have a coherent
That's why they
conversation.
like it. Sort of.
Sure.
I don't know.
But just the transient nature of how people are communicating now as well. So let's say you respond to a story. Like, is that really a conversation? Is that a buy-in to a conversation? You know, and when you're texting, it's incredibly convenient. I'm not going to say it's not, right? Because I sent my friend voice messages.
Yeah.
You know, he's probably busy working, living his life, but that voice message is there. He can look at it. Well, he can listen to it and respond to it. But even a text, right? You can text people and it's there. But just the fact that it's not a long, sustained conversation,
Yeah.
and it's very sporadic, and there's time in between, which gives you time to, you know, come up with a question to ask or something to keep the conversation afloat. It is a bit of a skill to be able to
I'm a
chat
horrible
with someone
texter.
to horrible at what?
I'm a horrible texter.
Yeah. But in conversation, you wouldn't be able to tell that.
My problem with texting is it is so, I find it like, it's so like, not selfish, but it's like, I sent you a message, right? Yeah, you may
How
have,
dare
but
you respond to me
right?
late?
Yeah. And like you also, I have no idea what you mean when you ask that question. And now if I'm trying to clarify, it can look like it just, there's so many. See, it's my daughter. She's phoning me. I'll phone you back. But it's so, yeah, it's so hard to understand tone and it's so hard to know what the meaning is. And it's so like, just because you sent me a message, I didn't answer it. Like, right? If you phone me and I don't answer the phone, it's because I can't talk, right? But it's so just like demanding. You don't just, I said, like, you don't just get to talk whenever you want to talk.
Well, I deleted my email app off my phone like 2 years ago. Great decision. That's something I got from Tim Ferriss. It's
Okay.
like, you know, because you just get dinged, and half the time you get dinged for nonsense.
Yes.
Right? And that's another thing. I really like the cell phone policy. I've been learning more about the role that kind of how your brain focuses and what distraction does to your ability to remember and recall. But, you know, if you're just constantly on a phone or it dings you, they've noticed that there was a study done where a set of people were studying for 30 minutes, took a test. Another set of people studied for 30 minutes, maybe had 1, 2, or 3 interruptions. I think they tested all 3. And just as that phone dinged, even if they didn't look at it, just
Yeah.
the shift over, everyone, it's like the people who had no disruptions to the people who had 3 disruptions, just huge significance, or significant drop. But coming back to the whole communication, it does break up the way we communicate. And so when you're talking to a person, they can kind of get a feel for if you're joking, if you're being serious, right? Or if you're not, right? So even those 2 students mentioning, you know, like, oh, you've gotten mad or upset at times. It's likely because it showed on my face, not necessarily because I was yelling or anything else. It's just, if anything, I would probably slow down my speech and lower it. But coming back to that communication bit and how necessary it is to learn the skill of being able to communicate with someone in person.
And they don't want to. People don't want to anymore. Like they don't want to go into the store. They just want to order it on the app and have it get dropped off. They don't want to order for themselves. They want to talk to people. And they get anxiety when they have to speak in front of people. Like when I went to school, you had to do a presentation. You did a presentation. Maybe one kid got exempt because they really couldn't, but most people are doing it,
I
right?
was going to give you flack because I implemented one of your policies of bring some kids into lunch, and oh, it's just terrible. like no one wants to present to the class.
They don't want to.
And which is unfortunate, right? Because speaking is part of relationship building.
Yeah.
You can pretend and fool yourself that you know somebody through text, but unless you really hung out with them, you really don't. So even kind of with our conversation beforehand, it is difficult to maintain relationships with people who are far away. And so for myself, like it has to be sporadic because these aren't necessarily people that I see on a day-to-day basis anyways, nor am I going to discuss with these people like day-to-day occurrences, right?
They know like the chill Najib, the summer Najib.
No. So even when I meet them, I will tell them, I'll get very vulnerable or intimate in my discussion. Like I have no problem doing that, but it's just, well, today's Thursday. I'm not going to message you today just because
Because you don't have time, right? Like there's nothing to.
No, the relationship as well is just based on both parties are very okay with chatting when we can chat, right? And obviously both people have busy lives as well, but at least having that comfortability to send my friends a voice message, even though some of these guys I haven't known for very long or don't know nearly as well as people I know here. Whereas, this Brazilian couple that I'm friends with and been training jiu-jitsu with for some time, and we've been friends for almost 5 years now. We'll send like memes back and forth here and there and like just a couple comments in the week, but almost religiously every Saturday for the last 3 or 4 years, definitely 2 years, we've had dinner together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'll show up there at 6 and most nights I'll leave at like midnight.
Do you always just go there? Do they cook for you?
Yeah, they have an apartment.
Aww.
Yeah, I've had them over sometimes. So I live with roommates and sometimes it's tricky.
Yeah.
But here and there I've
Like,
cooked
are you
for them as
invited?
well.
Have you ever formally made sure that you're invited?
Yeah, at the start a lot.
Okay.
No, it's always
They haven't moved and not told you where they live?
Oh, no, I've helped them move a couple of times. Well, it's interesting too with the difference in culture, right? So the Brazilian, I don't know if I mentioned. So
Yeah.
Brazilian culture is very much community, family oriented, see each other. You show up, you chat. You don't watch
Yeah.
the game. You don't watch the fights. You don't play a game or whatever.
You sit and you
Right?
visit.
You sit and you visit. You talk about one another's lives and
Sure.
other things, whatever's going
Yeah.
on. But that time invested over a few years is what's important.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to text them. And it's not really something that we did prior to either. It was just, I'll see these guys at jiu-jitsu. And when I'm there, it's always that touching base with people and building relationships.
You are a relationship person too.
My friend that I lived with called me a flock builder. He said
Yeah.
when I told him several
Is it
stories
because
of
of
my
the way you
life.
look? You went
No,
with
but I had a
flock?
Moses coat. Flock of sheep. No, I don't know what you're referring
No, I
to.
meant flock of sheep because the way you look like you could be from the Bible. Like, just
Okay. But
you're-
one thing he had observed, or even I've observed at the mosque, at my jiu-jitsu gym, the previous one, at the gym I worked out at, schools, eventually over time, like there's a group of people that just flock towards me for whatever reason. Part of that is probably the compassion bit of like, if someone is chatting with me, I will ask them my own series of questions to get to know people. A lot of it is just, how are you? How are you doing? And then just sitting there waiting for them to answer and actually listening and then asking follow-up questions. So someone's like, work was pretty tiring. It's like, hey, what do you do for work? Tell me more, just going more in depth.
yeah.
Another thing for myself, relationship building was there was a period in my life where, so I had done a gratitude practice, kind of a self, like, what am I grateful for?
Like every day?
Yeah, I did that every day for a couple months, but about 2 years I had this practice of being very grateful intentionally. And then I transfer that into expressing gratitude as well. So there's a handful of people at my gym that I was training with. Every time I'd see them, I'd just say, hey, glad to see you, happy you're here, or some sort of comment. And it's very interesting, these guys that I would only chat to for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes a week. After like a few years, when I left my gym, one of the guys was very sad, like he was very bothered. The guy who lives in BC as well, he's just someone who I'd see him working out after jiu-jitsu. So I'm like, I'll just go over there and be like, hey, what's going on? Right? and then the reciprocity as well. Because if it's just one way, you just keep showing up. Unless you're,
For dinner on Saturday.
yeah.
But the thing about you is you are very, even though you can be like, you know how you get into your like bullying
Rash.
ways. Yeah. But you really are calm. Well, like people can come to you and feel safe coming to you, and you're not into like you're not scary. You're not at them. You let people be. You let people be who they are, and you're genuinely like interested in who they are, and you ask questions, and like
See, I always thought it was the fact that I listen
you do listen.
after asking the
You do
question.
listen, yeah. But you ask questions, and but when you even show it like on your face, like you, I don't know what's happening in your head, but it looks like you're actually like processing it, and like you have like a look that you care. It's like a look in your eyes that you actually care.
Interesting.
You do. So thank your parents for that.
I don't know what you think.
Yeah, but
Thank God. It's a very useful skill.
yeah,
But that is a comment I've heard from some people. Like I remember I had a friend in university. His name was Paul, and this guy was like 40, and he was. Well, yeah, I was like 20, 21. So it's like, but I just keeping up with him. And his thing was he could play the piano. So this one day I'm passing by Hub Mall, going through there, and I see him in one of the branches, kind of towards humanity. Oh shit, that's Paul. I'm like, hey man, I didn't know you played piano. So I actually many days I would just come sit, listen, and then I ask him questions about playing music and just building the relationship there. And that was a comment he made as well. Like, he just felt very comfortable, which I think, I don't know, on that question, on that note of judgment, like, should you judge someone when they do something, right? So particularly, we come back to that relationship building and respect.
yeah,
Definitely when it's just an other entity, it's very easy to just be like, oh, cool, like, live your life.
yeah.
If you want to share with me, right? But
Yeah.
then all of a sudden when it's like, let's say it's a family member or a partner or someone that you're going into business with, like, no, actually, these decisions affect
It
me,
affects you,
right?
yeah.
And so that kind of changes a bit as well.
Yeah.
So you didn't. So then coming back to this question, you didn't necessarily read a lot on relationship building, but you grew up in a household that really emphasized getting to know people and caring about them and respecting them and treating them in a dignified manner, no matter more or less what they wanted.
Yeah. I never actually ever even thought about it, about not doing it, or I never thought, oh, this is something I should learn about to do. No, it's just the way I was raised, I guess. It's just what I've always known.
Interesting. Okay. We kind of covered the next question, but if you want to go into more detail on it, do the relationships ever get in the way of your job as an administrator?
No, I mean, just time, right? Like, okay, so this kid knows that I care and this is going on, so we need to have time to, I need to be there, right? Being present. So just being able to have myself where I need to be, and for others to respect that. So like, just because I'm talking to a student, or just because I'm talking to a teacher or whatever, it's I'm not sharing everything with you, right? Trust, right? And so for other people to understand that, no, I'm not sharing these things with you because it's not your story, and you don't get to know because it's not shared with you.
You're talking about students asking for information on other students.
No, like, or like
When you
anyone.
say
Like
share,
if I have a student that I'm talking to, and then you're their teacher, and you want to know, hey, tell me everything. Well, I can tell you everything. I'm going to tell you.
go build that relationship yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not going to share because I feel so like privileged and honored and like just privileged really to have people share with me. So for me to share that with somebody else, that's not my place. So, and that can be sometimes hurtful to other teachers or to right? Like, I mean, obviously if it's something that needs to be shared, I would, but
Because you're not referring to professional obligations. 'Cause
No.
I'm sure
Yeah.
I'd come to you at some point, hey, do you know anything about the student that I should be aware of?
yeah.
And that's a very different set of information than like,
You want to know why so-and-so was crying when they were talking.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. And I'm
I
not
don't
going to
know
tell you
why
why
I
so-and-so.
necessarily
No.
asked that question.
But you want to
Very
know why
yeah.
I didn't I took so-and-so out of your class, for instance. You don't necessarily get to know that, right?
Yeah.
You might need to, because it might be
Yeah.
a reason why you
Well,
need to, right?
I think when you, for myself, like working on the building relationships and managing that of like, okay, I know this person very well and I don't know that person very well. Figuring out diplomatic ways to get information. So if you pull a kid out,
Yeah.
just asking like, hey, is everything okay? If everything's okay, it's like, okay, cool, you're doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And I have my job I need to do.
Yeah.
But
I know it's the
then
work.
the response,
the work is in the way because I got to work. And I just want to talk to people and
you know,
know
because
people.
there have been times where you said, I'll send you an email. Like, okay, well, I'll be filled in later.
Yeah.
But I guess you are referring to, in a sense, then not necessarily gossip so much in the negative way, but in the gossipy sense of like, oh, I'd also like to know this information, like what's new on the tree branch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And obviously, then if a student or someone has shared and divulged information with you, yes, you can't just go because then no one will share anything with you, right? If they know, like, oh, you tell everyone.
I wouldn't tell anyone anything ever, unless obviously if they're not safe or if, I have a professional obligation to share something. But yeah, so
And so you don't find when it comes, and maybe at this school, no offense, this doesn't happen as much, but when it comes down to the line of deciding what a consequence could be for a student, you don't find that your relationship gets in the way.
you teach and you talk a lot about equity, right? 100%. But as you get to know the kids, you know what works for kids. You also know what's fair, and what's fair may not be the same, right? It's everybody's different. It's like as a mom, I have 4 kids, and a stepson, and they are all different, right? And I know for one, if I need something to happen, I gotta yell at them. And I know this, you could probably guess, but I know this one, if I yell at this one, they're gonna be in tears, and I've hurt that relationship. I've heard that relationship now, and not, I haven't just heard it for today. I've heard that for a long time, because yelling is right. Same thing at school. Some kids, it's like, hey, you need a good talking to, and here we go. And some kids need a phone home, and some kids, it depends, right? So I don't know if that answered your question. I don't even remember what your question was.
That does, right? Because that comes back down to the foundation of if you know that person, you will have a degree of understanding what will actually bother them. We could go on a tangent about the Bible, but it's not all coming back to me. I guess it's kind of on that note of self-awareness and self-consciousness. It's like if you know a person, you can figure out very quickly what hurts them.
I don't want to hurt them.
Broadly speaking, in terms of like, okay, there's malicious intent, which is not what we're
I
doing,
want
but
them
you understand
to
what is a
make
consequence for them.
Yeah, I want.
Which for them could be hurtful, right? Like,
Yeah.
so for example, there was, and we don't need to discuss the details, but there was a particular student in my class who had an out-of-school suspension last Friday. I don't know why, I don't know what went on, and I don't know what the reasoning was for that as well, but maybe it was determined at that point for that reason, the out-of-school suspension was the best. And given this particular student's circumstances and what was going on, maybe that was a very, like, oh shit moment for that kid of like, yeah, I really did mess up, and now I don't get an opportunity to be here with my friends, right? And so that's kind of on that note. I don't remember the particular biblical references, but it's Adam and Eve stuff, right? Like the self-awareness. It's like you start to understand what hurts a person when you're self-aware, self-conscious.
Yeah.
And you can then choose whether you want malicious intent or like, okay, I need to pick a very effective consequence here.
Yeah, I need you to know, like, you have to have a consequence because, I mean, first you need to have the learning, some people don't actually know, because we've all learned different things, and we all come here in grade 9, and or whatever grade we come, but we assume that they have certain learnings, but they don't all, especially because we just had COVID for 2 years and a whole bunch didn't even go to school.
Well, and then adding to that note, just different cultures and
Different
backgrounds.
cultures, and
Vastly different.
as time goes on, more and more different cultures, right? And I'm learning every day about different cultures and different customs, but so you have to make sure they know, and they were clear that what they did was not right, okay? And then there needs to be a consequence, because you need to have a consequence. And then there needs to be forgiveness, and they have to make it right. Like, what are you going to do different, or so that's why, like, if we did a suspension, you'd always have a readmission meeting, right? Like, what did you do? How was that wrong? What are you going to do different? And then how can I help you? Because I'm actually
Is
here
that something
to
you
help you.
personally do, or is that
Yeah.
something that's just done automatically?
That's something that we do. Yeah. Like, how can I support you to do better, right?
When they come back from suspension,
Mm-hmm.
this happens across the board.
Like in every school? I don't know about in every school.
Okay,
But
so that's one of your practices.
yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Where did you get that from? Because I've been suspended in my day, and it's just like you show up the next time.
I don't know if it's like,
Because I think that's very good intervention.
yeah, like you have to, right? Otherwise you're when I went to school, the same kids would get suspended over and over and over again for the same things. And I mean, that still happens, right? I mean, there's still people that are going to continue to do it, but hopefully not as much. Hopefully they're learning. Hopefully the next time you're talking to them, it's for something different. Like I always tell them, okay, you can't do this same thing. You're gonna screw up a lot, because we're supposed to, and we do our whole life. It's not like I don't screw up, you don't. We all do, right? But if I keep doing the same thing, like that's just dumb, right? Like, and you're not dumb. So make a new mistake, because this mistake
It's getting old. It's getting boring.
right? So let's move on. So,
That's
but
right.
you need
I
to
don't know
have
if you've
that
seen.
meeting.
I don't know if you've seen many Marvel movies, but Loki and Thor's relationship is very much like that. Of course, by the third movie, he's like, "Oh, I know all your tricks." Right? Same old thing. I knew you were going to do this. I knew you were going to do that. It's just getting old. Like, try something new.
Yeah, do something different.
Yeah.
I want to watch Thor now.
Of course you. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. What advice do you have in regards to balancing relationship building with being a leader in the classroom?
Oh, like, what do you want to know? I think my brain just got exhausted.
I guess we can tie that in with the next question
Okay.
too. So this balance also comes with maintaining a line and boundary with students. And what role does age play in this as well? That's more of a personal question I'm curious about.
Okay, so like when I will never forget, like my first year teaching was grade 6 in Panuca,
1999.
1999.
How old would you have been?
23?
Wow, okay, so we started teaching at the same age.
Really?
I'm pretty sure I was 23.
And I loved it. And the grade 6s loved me. And I loved that they loved me, right? And like, that was the thing. Like, I wanted them to love me. I was fun. We had music. We had all sorts, we had a great time. I'll never forget Curtis Vold. Oh God, I was mad. So I had grade 6, and then I had grade 7, and then I had grade 8. And in grade 8, so I had Curtis for 3 years, and I was pregnant in grade 8. Not in grade 8, but I was pregnant teaching grade 8. And I came in the classroom and he was hiding, and he was under my desk. I didn't know this, and I'm like, I didn't know he was hiding. So whatever, we went about, and I went to my desk because kids are starting to do their stuff, and all of a sudden he pops out. And I got scared and I screamed and I lost it. I was so mad. I was pregnant. I wasn't really in the mood, but I was at fault because I had had Curtis for grade 6, grade 7, Curtis had done this lots. This was fun. This is what you did. You hid under my desk. You pop out of different places and scare me, and it'd be fun, and we'd laugh, and I was cool, and but I was so mad, and I gave it to him. Like, I yelled hard. I used to yell at my kids.
At your students.
At my students. And so I yelled, and like, looking back now, that was me. I had built a culture where you could do that, and then he was doing exactly what they could do, and I changed. And I never let them know that the culture's changed. I never let them know the expectation had changed. I had just changed. I changed because I was getting, not that old, but I was pregnant. I had lots going on in my life.
You weren't 23.
No.
By this
You're
like 29.
we're older. No, like 26.
Yeah, sorry, my math is terrible. I jumped 6 years.
But right? Yeah. And then I remember I had a boy in my class it was grade 8. I was teaching grade 8 drama. And I was in his face because he was just being a goofball. And he called me a bitch. And I said, get out. You go to the office. And it was funny because the principal at the time was his auntie. So he went down to the office, and after class, she called me down, and he's sitting there, and she's sitting at her desk, and I'm sitting there, and she said, what's wrong? I said, well, he called me a bitch. And I'll never forget. She says, were you a bitch? And I was like, wow, I could not believe, I was so mad at her, and I was so like,
no, but I'm about to be.
I couldn't believe she said that. Now, and I would never do that to a teacher, but now looking back, when I look back, I was being a bitch. I had a grade 8 boy, and I was blasting him in front of his peers. What's he going to do? I was being a bitch. Should he have said that? No. Should she have said that to me in front of him? No. Maybe she could have gave him back and then later said, hey, Mandy, you know what? Here's some things that we need to work on. Or what was your part in this? Or how did you see this? Or help mentor me to like see that I was a bitch. I didn't see it for years. And I would always tell the story about how unsupportive she was. She called me out. I was a bitch. I taught here grade 9, and I had a girl.
Can we speak for a moment on that topic?
Me being a bitch. Wow. I got a wow.
Because the way our profession is set up, it's very difficult to give people like critical feedback. Like, hey, like all your problems are created by yourself. Look in the mirror and like maybe clean the mirror before you look at it so you can see yourself honestly. It's very hard to do. And you know,
God, I felt old when I just said bless you, but bless you for saying that.
No, actually, because I'm very fortunate that the friend that I live with, like, he's very different to myself, and we see things very differently. But you know, we're both trying to grow, and so it's always like, well, Najib, you know, if you're tired of marking, why are you assigning stuff? Brilliant, right? And then coming back down to, well, how do I get 3 of the best assignments I possibly can, and just do that. You know, if a kid's upset at you, it's like, well, why did you even bother to care about this? Like, you know, nothing's going to happen in the school system. You know, XYZ behaviors are going to be accepted for XYZ reasons. And just starting this process of being incredibly self-reflective, like, what am I doing to cause this stuff happening? You know, there's no reason why my classroom can't or shouldn't, you know, look like heaven on earth, but what am I doing? And we discuss culture as well. What are we doing in our classroom to set up this culture? You know, so for example, and it's very tough, right? So one of my students, I'll mention his name to you later, you know, if he listens to this, he likes lunging into the snack bin and taking 2 items. You know, I smacked his hand once.
Yeah.
And, you know, now it's almost like a bit of a game. You know, I grabbed his wrist. But now, you know, just on that, like, on that note of, like, how do you deal with this snack bin issue of kids just lunging in? And that's a very nuanced and complicated issue. But other things, like, okay, if the snack bin's behind my desk, it's nothing to do with the snack bin. It's like, no, you don't come behind my desk. And maybe that hasn't been clearly communicated, but there's also that disruption of, that didn't need to be communicated when I was in school. And I was in school 10 years ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah.
There were certain things that just didn't need to be communicated. But then also then having that self-reflection. And, you know, this is why I asked you about mentorship. Like, I would love to just go sit in someone else's class. One thing I'm very curious about is, like, how long do you actually lecture? Some days for me it's 30 minutes. Some days like today in social 30 was 45 minutes.
I heard. Just
Right?
kidding. No, I didn't hear.
Well, maybe you heard the snoring, right? Because there's a couple of kids sleeping, but having that ability to, because it's hard to be self-aware and self-reflect, and it's even worse when you're in an echo chamber that there's always going to be this overlap. I went to school 10 years ago. Things were very different. So when I'm 35 and I have a 25-year-old teacher, they're going to say, well, things were so different when I was in school. This whole overlap, and how do you actually give someone that feedback where you tell them, like, no, Mandy, you created this problem. Now I understand that maybe you're XYZ feeling this way. And, for the record, like, this week wasn't a good week for me emotionally. Like, I don't know why, just very offbeat. But understanding and recognizing that I have to be very much, like, I can't
care,
yell.
right? Yeah.
I can't get upset. Yeah, and it's a horrible thing as well. It's like, they don't give a damn.
No, they don't.
Right?
And they don't have to. But what you have to do is you have to take the time to build your culture. And you have to, like, intentionally, with your class, come up with what are the norms in this classroom. And for each of the classes you teach, the norms are going to be different. So in your grade 12 class, it's going to be very different than your grade 9 class. And it just is, because you have a level of maturity, right? So, like, just like we did with the cell phones, or I don't know, like, you have to have those conversations with your class, and they have to know. And so, like, at the beginning of the semester, I take sticky notes, and everyone gets a whole pile of sticky notes, and you write down, what does a working classroom look like? And you write all your things, each one's a sticky note. And then we have the whole classroom is full of sticky notes everywhere as we come to, okay, look at you. 25 of you out of 28 said it looks like when somebody is talking, you're not. Okay. All of you wrote down the word respect. 5 of you wrote down no cell phones. 8 of you wrote down we should have cell phones. 14 of you wrote down you should get to go to the bathroom. Like, so then we have this conversation. What does it actually look like? What can we agree on? What's it going to look like? And then you talk about it. So when you start your class, all right, guys, we're going to go over our expectations. And you do it in a way that is meaningful to your group. So it's going to look different for everybody, but you need to have your expectations. Because, if I'm talking to a kid because they've been sent down to the office and I'm talking about, okay, what was the expectation? Well, I was supposed to do this work. All right. And what does that look like when you're doing the work? Are you allowed to talk? Are you like, right? If you're sent down because you're being disruptive, I was talking, but so-and-so was talking too. Okay, so are you allowed to talk, but you're, like, what are the rules? And we assume that people know because we know, like, I know when I go to a meeting, am I on my cell phone?
No.
Not right now. We never said, hey, you're not on your cell phone. However, I do have it here. But we have, like, I kind of know, I have a social understanding of I wouldn't be sitting here on my cell phone, right? But if you were sitting here with a kid and they had their phone, probably they'd have it in their hand and they'd look at it and they might sneak a couple, right? They might even be, like, you don't know, right? You would have to say to the kid, hey, for this activity, you can't have your cell phone, it's got to be down. You have to go over it. And then they might be like,
so whatever. One thing that I didn't do with you for this interview that I've done with other people.
Oh, is this being recorded?
I mentioned.
You didn't tell me it was being recorded.
Well, I mentioned, like, hey, it's a teacher channel, so let's not swear. But then
we both swore.
Yeah. So the last guy I interviewed, the episode's coming out tomorrow. I should have made this. I should have made the distinction with him, like, hey, no hard swears, like.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
But obviously, the story helps the context. One thing I will comment on that though is. One of the things that saddens me about this profession, my friend commented on this a lot. He's the one who encouraged me to start recording my lessons. When I started teaching about my contract, I was explaining to him, like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do on Monday. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, this is a social 30 class. I have no material. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm sure there's some material out there, like some government-made material.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called a textbook. What are you saying, Najib? There's no generalized material? No, there's nothing. And he shook his head, he started laughing, like, yeah, I already didn't like this area of life, and now I just have even less respect for it. And that's one of the things that, even onboarding onto a school, start of the year, September, hey, here's a checklist, make sure you've done these things.
Yeah.
Here's a certain checklist for other areas. Hey, everyone should have a set of classroom rules. Now, either you make them or you build this culture with them. And just trying to figure out procedures. So that's kind of what I've been doing with my writing and figuring out the procedure and the process so that I can just give that to some young teacher and say, hey, listen, let's sit down after school one day. We'll talk about this. I'll give this to you. You use it and keep building your understanding. Read some of these exemplars. But this document will give you a leg up so you don't have to worry about writing because I've done maybe 3 to 5 years of work onto this document and a 6-year-old should be able to understand it. We just don't have a lot of that. And maybe that's a school to school, district
I
to
think
district
it
thing.
is something that, because here, I mean, we have, well, we're new admin, really, to be. And I think that's something that I agree. We need to build into our school culture and we need to have that. And because, like, during the PLCs at the beginning of the year, so like, I'm going to use literacy for an example, and I'm not going to get into what it looked like. However, I am going to say that it's a new program and we're supposed to create it. We need to have that time to do it, and we need to have those conversations, and we need to look at this is where we need to get. So where are we now and how are we going to get there? And we have to plan it together. And you shouldn't be an island. You shouldn't have to do that on your own. There needs to be, you need to have that. Yeah,
That could
because
be very related
right?
to teacher burnout, right?
100%.
When no one tells you. So I do have classroom rules and I explain unwritten rules, right?
Yeah.
Unwritten rules, don't put your feet on the table or desk.
Yeah.
But, I got that from a book.
Yeah.
From Roxana Eldon, right? See Me After Class, very good book. But, no one really tells you to make these things. And that culture thing I quite like. It's like, ask your kids, well, what should this classroom look like?
I think, so I come from elementary. I've been in elementary forever. So it was just, this is what we all did. And so learning what it's like in a high school, it's different in the sense that you don't have so many, everybody's kind of got their own specialty, right? Which is very different than elementary. So we all, you have your norms and your classroom expectations, and we have a folder where, so that if you send me a kid from your class, here's Miss Drew's rules. All right, let's see. Uh-oh. Yeah, you were good. You had your work. Yeah, you were good. You raised your hand to talk. Uh-oh. You didn't keep your hands to yourself. You were punching. You're not, right? So it's very, right? Mm-hmm. And then for some reason, or then it's easy. I know what the rules are as admin, because I can't support you if I have no idea if they even, because kids are going to say, oh, I didn't know. He didn't tell me I couldn't have my phone. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you told him or not, because, right? So I think we do need that, and I think that that's something that we definitely need to continue to grow and mm-hmm. bring 100%. And I think starting as a new teacher too, making a list of those things, because I think we need to have something like that for everybody too. So mm-hmm. there's homework for you.
You know what? One thing, a great place to start with, and I could chat with David about this, is coming up with a school, a vision. Like, what are we moving towards mm-hmm. forward into when we're at Christ the King? What is that vision? Mm-hmm. What is our focus?
Like, what is our
mission?
Yeah.
When a student comes here, what are we trying to do?
Yeah.
Right. Because we both were reading out of one of these books, and they really emphasize, create a tagline, and that tagline really envisions what your company is about.
So we do have that. It's like, they call it our BHAG. What's our big overarching hairy audacious goal? But I don't think it's something that's what it's called, your big hairy audacious goal. But yeah.
Well, what
are we working towards? So when I was at St. Ben's, ours was that all students would be at, we use their government exams. They would all be at a level of acceptance. And we were all responsible for that. Here, right now, we are making sure that all students feel connected or safe with some adult, so that we don't ever have a student that does not have somebody that they feel like they can go to. And I think about, like that boy that I got the hug from today. Thank God that he got that from me, but I also wonder, does he have, because he has does he have somebody that he has that with? But I do think that because we made it, And I think it's something that we need to work on. Okay, we have to revisit this. And what does this look like? Right? Is this our goal is for everybody to know that they have a safe person? Because right now with COVID and with mental health and with so many, just everything that's going on in the world right now, we want to make sure that everybody is okay. Right? And then we add to that because I think we also need to have some sort of
Right, because you
academic
can't
goal.
baby people forever.
No,
right?
and we
Like,
are, we need to, right? That's going to be for me because I probably have to go to work.
Well, I can pause this.
okay, we are back. So obviously for you, there's no delay. For us, there's been about 2 weeks in between. We've shifted around. But question 13, is it necessary to build relationships to properly run a classroom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I said that. It absolutely is. So talking about just myself coming here this year to a new school after being at a different school for 17 years, you have no credibility. And if you want the kids to learn from you and you want the kids to grow, you need to have a relationship with them. They need to know that you care and that you care about them. The only way that you are going to let them know that you care about them is if you actually care about them. And it's like when I first met you last year. Do you remember? And my kids are introducing you to me.
Yes.
I had no
Fine
idea.
arts now.
Yeah, I had no idea. I just thought you were some strange guy.
You thought I was a student.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
And daughter, first thing she says, Mom, this is the guy I told you to fire.
I would never fire you because you already know the answer to this. You build relationships with kids. And the relationships that you build are different than the relationships that I would build because we're different, right? But I can't let the kids know that I care. I couldn't let you know that I care until I actually cared, right? And so I have to get to know you and know who you are. Now, obviously, it's the relationship that I would have with a colleague is different than the relationship with a kiddo, with a student, but they need to know that I care. And I do care. And if you want to properly run a classroom, you can't do it with fear. It's got to be with respect. You can have them behave using fear, but if you want them to learn and to be engaged and to buy in, they need to know that you care about them and that you respect them. And when I was growing up, they always said, something that always stuck out is some people would say, I don't respect somebody if they don't respect me. And we grew up knowing you respect your elders, which you do, but you also need to respect the kids and they need to know that they're respected and heard. So absolutely, you need to build relationships and you need to foster those relationships. You need to.
It's hard work.
It is. It's exhausting and tiring because then you actually have to teach them too, right?
So like coming back from the break, the Monday, I offer the kids like, okay, we can do more notes, or I could take some time to walk around and talk to you individually about your break.
Yeah.
Right. And doing that in a class alone and it takes enough energy already. And then, on Tuesday and Wednesday, kids are like, oh, we didn't do anything on Monday. And that just drives you crazy. But then additionally in a school small enough where you can actually get to know all of the kids to then make sure you check in. It's like, have I spoken to all of these kids? Yeah. Right. But then you slowly start to see, there's a guy, he sits out by one of the ledges in the center, who I taught last semester. And, I chatted with him for a brief moment, about his break. And it's very clear the more students you talk to, how little attention they actually get. So that relationship means a lot to them, right? And then how does that relate to how they feel about coming to this building, right? Because again, the content is of what we teach them oftentimes is less valuable to them. And even for us, like I don't remember much of what I learned in school, but the relationships built with the teachers and being able to chat with them about certain things, or every now and then when they would give us a piece of advice and it actually stuck.
And you remember it. Like those big things you remember even now. I still remember my grade 1 teacher, Mrs. Emmanuel. I still remember my grade 4 teacher. I still remember Mr. LaCroix in grade 7. Like I remember the teachers. Don't necessarily have a clue what I was taught, but I was obviously taught something. But I remember them and the relationship things that they taught me more so than the content, right?
I guess I could ask another question, like, should we then reflect more on what we teach and how we teach it? If at the end of it, so many people have this experience that, oh, I don't remember what I was taught, but I do remember the person who was teaching it. Or should we be reflecting more?
How we run a classroom or how we run a school and what is productive for the kids. So is it so important that they know the date of this war, or is it more important that they know, okay, these things happened. What am I going to do, or how can I act, or what can I do to make sure they don't happen again, or how can I make changes in the world, right? So they still need to know things happened, and they still need to know how to do things. But then it's like being practical with it, and what does that look like, especially with technology, because you can just Google anything, right? So who really cares if you know the answer to this fact? However, you need to know how to get the answer. You need to know what to do with it. And education is changing so much, right? And it's not about sitting in a desk taking notes. It's about doing things, right? Kids want to feel purpose. You always hear like, why are we doing this? When am I going to have to do this? But if you can see the purpose and the value in it, or if you can feel like you are making a change, then you have them.
Cool.
So
Okay. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to wrap up with on the topic of leadership through relationship building? Like what advice, anything you have in mind?
I think just the value of actually caring and like actually it is like you said, it's tiring and it's hard work. It is, but it's also really valuable and rewarding. And like this week, we're going through the Stations of the Cross and Jesus dying on the cross. And tonight he'll have the Last Supper and he'll wash the feet. Tomorrow he'll die on the cross. Sunday he will rise again. And that all has been taught to us about how to serve others and the relationship that Jesus had with the disciples and with his followers, and then how the end is hope, right? So, like in our schools, we are here to serve these kids. And it sounds funny, but we're here. Like I tell them, I'm here because
Why would you say that sounds funny?
it's fun.
That's
It sounds
accurate.
funny because the kids are like, "You're serving me." Yeah, I'm serving you. I'm here to serve, and I'm here to serve you because I'm going to be gone, right? Like Jesus is here, but he's gone. He's not right here, but they're still here. They're still here, and they're going to continue on after I'm out of here. But hopefully, I can mentor caring about others, so that they do it wherever they go. If they're in schools, if wherever they're working, whatever they do with their home life, wherever they go, we're all here to serve others and to be in relationship. We are relationship people, right? Like we are not supposed to be alone on an island. So yeah,
What's the worst thing you can do to a prisoner? You put them in
all
isolation.
alone, right?
Right. The United Nations actually has a limitation. Like I think it's 7 days, and beyond that, it's inhumane treatment.
Really?
Yeah, to isolate a
Yeah.
prisoner beyond 7 days or
I didn't
some
know
amount
that
of
was
days. Yeah,
they need to have a human interaction, right? And just like when you look
Which
at
for
babies, they
like
need to have
yeah,
human
like
interaction
for the record, I mean, historically, like they would just put a person in a cell and
for
just
like
leave them
leave them.
like years,
That's crazy.
right?
And then you wonder why people that are isolated don't reform, right?
Well, even that topic has been discussed with school shooters. Like, they had no real social network. And so it's very easy to remove the humanity from a person if you don't feel connected to them,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, even like, well, what's the solution to racism? Is it, policies that get more people of various ethnic backgrounds through legal processes, or is it like,
Putting them
actually
together.
having a
Yeah.
friend,
Yeah.
right?
Getting to know them.
It's kind of funny, they say you know, people say, oh, I'm not racist. Like I have a black friend or I have a brown friend or XYZ. And quite frankly, if you look at it, that actually is the path to not being racist. Because then you see them as a person and not just something on the news or just a object of fascination. It's like, oh, like I know XYZ group of people. Like I've chatted with them, I've shared meals with them, you know,
Yeah.
and then you start to understand, well, clearly there are people who do things well and other people who don't do things well. Right. And that all comes from relationship building, actually having a friendship with someone. As funny as it might sound, as much as they might say on the news that, oh, well, it makes you racist for saying, like, oh, well, I have a black friend. That doesn't make me racist. It's like, well, that is the path out of it.
It's because I think that racism and things come from like fear of the unknown, fear you don't know, and you don't when you get to know somebody and realize they are just human, just like us. Like, right, we're all just humans. It takes away that the fear. So yeah.
Cool.
And also, this is my bad angle. We should be going that way.
Oh, we'll be fine. Okay, we'll wrap up
Delete
there.
that.
You good to go?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You.